Greetings, everyone. I am Dr. Wolf, and I just saw Common Ground. And I have to say, there's quite a bit about this episode that really touched me. I mean, it's not all apparent on the surface, but when you look into how this episode was created and especially why, it actually adds a lot of depth to everything that you see here. But we'll get into that. First off, it's interesting to see that Pinky, Fluttershy, and Snails have sports fans. I'm not sure that Fluttershy would have been able to handle having a crowd following her around all that well, especially when we saw that back in season 1 with Green Isn't Your Color. But yeah, she seems to have grown into it. But the main purpose behind this episode has to do with the return of Quibble Pants. And yeah, you wouldn't have expected to see a character like that again, but the story they came up with here is really touching. First off, the voice actor behind Quibble Pants, Patton Oswalt, what makes this really interesting is the fact that his special friend and her daughter, Clear Sky and Windsprint, are voiced by his real-life wife and daughter. And that by itself would make this quite fascinating, because how many episodes of MLP have there been a family of voice actors taking on characters? Goodness. But it goes much deeper than that, because Patton Oswalt, I think he had a lot to do with how this story was created, and especially why. You may not know this, but his wife actually passed away unexpectedly in her sleep back in 2016. And it turns out that over the years, Patton did remarry, but his daughter from his first wife, I imagine, took a little time getting used to her new mother, getting used to having her father being interested in someone else. I mean, there is a line late in this episode, "I'm not going to forget about Dad." And yeah, the way that Clear Sky responds to that, you don't need to forget about him, but you can learn to appreciate and accept both your father and Quibble Pants in your life. You don't need to forget about either one of them. And when you think about, this is based on a lot of what happened in Patton's real life with his real daughter. I mean, the roles were reversed. It's basically, in this episode, Quibble is trying to get into a life with a mother and daughter, whereas in Patton's real life, it was actually bringing in someone new for him and his daughter. And when you look at this episode with all of that in mind, it becomes so much more touching. Thinking about how Quibble really wants to get to be a good friend to little Windsprint here. Now, naturally, it's going to be a situation where Rainbow Dash is being Rainbow Dash. She's trying way too hard on the quick fix, thinking very short term, trying to see, well, I know everything there is to know about being a sports pony. I'm sure I can turn you into being a sports pony. Whether it is lying through their teeth or getting Quibble to work out and fail miserably at it. And even attempting to get him to play a round of buckball with Windsprint. You think that on the surface, they might be good ideas, especially trying to get Pinky and Fluttershy to help make Quibble Pants look good, even though it gets really awkward later on. Oh my goodness. But I do appreciate that the writers have presented a number of different situations that seem like they could work on the surface. And in this kind of circumstance, there really isn't a quick fix. There really isn't a reliable way of overcoming that giant hurdle. But I immensely appreciate how it all wrapped up in the end. Because the answer, as Clear Sky put it, was not through knowing famous ponies or buying lavish gifts, even though Rainbow Dash says technically it was the book that made the difference. It was really about getting Windsprint to tell him all about why Buckball excites her so much. Having her explain in detail about her passion, because that will work on so many levels for no matter who you're talking to. Getting them to express why they love a hobby so much. Even if you don't really understand everything that goes into it, even if you can't be as excited as they will ever be, it will always leave a lasting impression when you're showing a genuine interest, not just in being a buckball player or being a sports pony and athletic, but rather sharing in their passion by getting them to talk about it, getting them to show you, this is why I love everything about this. And that's not only deep, but given the context going into creating this episode, it really leaves an impression. I love that. Now, I will admit there aren't that many moments throughout that really got me to chuckle. I did enjoy Snips taking a page out of Flim and Flam's book, getting dollar signs in his eyes. And for a bit, I thought that it might have created a situation where Snails is so preoccupied with signing autographs that he might have been missing out on practice like Fluttershy and Pinkie were worried about in the very beginning. But I suppose that kind of conflict really wasn't necessary here. It would have taken focus away from what was really important with the lesson. Having Quibble understand how to connect with this family. And yeah, I love that. On its own, if there really wasn't all this context behind the episode, and knowing that Patton's real-life family voiced these other characters, and for the record, I do appreciate that being such a young actress, and perhaps being her very first role, she actually pulled it off pretty well. Especially all the deadpan moments. Yeah, that worked pretty well. I still deeply appreciate how everything came together. It may not be all that funny. It may not really stand out because this is a genuine slice of life episode and I doubt it'll have any real impact on the rest of the stories for season 9. But for closing out a character like Quibble and for giving Rainbow a bit of a lesson too, because yeah, she's going to do what she does, but I appreciate that she's learning a bit as well as Quibble. And I appreciate that, especially with Fluttershy and Pinkie Pie and Snails in the background doing their thing and having a few moments of entertainment to go along with it, it's bringing up continuity with multiple past episodes, while at the same time really standing out on its own. If I had never seen episodes before this, not knowing anything about Quibble, yeah, I might have gotten a little lost in figuring out why ogres and oubliettes was a thing, or why Dash was a little myth that she doesn't think Daring Do is athletic. I like the ideas that since Quibble was trying to overanalyze the game and say that, well, just because it's the wrong basket, I still made a point, we can still play. It works into the eventual resolution by showing that, hey, I know these plays because I'm reading the book, even if I don't really understand the passion behind everything. That is working to his strengths while also very much appealing to what Winsprint enjoys. The more I think about this episode, the more it gives me a warm feeling. The more it makes me appreciate the MLP staff making this all possible for Patton Oswalt's real life. I mean, how would you react in that situation? Understanding that you may not share the same interests with someone that you really want to get to know. To be honest, in my own real life, my lady and I don't share that many interests either. And yet, we still deeply care about each other's well-being and even each other's passions. She may not enjoy pretty much anything about My Little Pony, but I love the fact that she's willing to talk to me about it. She's willing to support me on it. And at the same time, I can appreciate that she made that effort. That she really wanted to hear why this was so important to me. And in turn, I was able to do many of the same things for her. So, on top of seeing how Patton's real life was reflected in an episode of MLP, it really related to me on a much more personal level. And I sincerely hope this is something that will be long remembered in the series. But what do you think? Given everything that we know about Rainbow Dash and even Quibble, do you suppose this is a good way for them to connect again and actually help each other through a problem? Were you aware that Patton's real-life wife and daughter, and really how they came together as a family, is reflected in the writing here? Leave your thoughts in the comments below, because as always, I am Dr. Wolf, and I look forward to hearing from you.